In early August 2026, one of Russia's most important logistics routes in southern Ukraine began appearing more often on Ukrainian drone control screens. The corridor stretches for hundreds of kilometers from Rostov on Don through Mariupol, Berdyansk, and Melitopol before connecting with routes leading toward Crimea. Every day, fuel, ammunition, military equipment, and reinforcements must continue moving through this network to support Russian forces fighting across several sectors. But in 2026, the distance that once helped protect these shipments is becoming less meaningful. Ukrainian drones are reaching deeper behind Russian lines, into areas where military trucks, fuel tankers, staging points, and repair facilities once had more room to operate without direct pressure. A long road can provide many options. It also creates hundreds of kilometers that Russia must monitor, protect, and keep open. If Ukraine does not need to destroy the entire corridor, but only make multiple sections of it dangerous on a regular basis, how much will Moscow have to change the way it moves supplies? And can a logistics network stretching for hundreds of kilometers continue to operate efficiently as the safe zone behind the front keeps shrinking? Let's find out with Military Force. Ukraine's medium-range drone campaign is pushing the battlefield farther behind Russian lines, especially along the corridor connecting Rostov-on-Don with Mariupol, Berdyansk, Melitopol, and the approaches to Crimea. The change is important because these roads were once treated as rear area routes, well beyond the reach of most frontline FPV drones. Ukraine now describes this deeper zone as part of its middle strike effort. The Defense Ministry says the category covers targets about 20 to 150 kilometers from the front, while other Ukrainian reporting has placed some missions as far as 200 kilometers behind Russian positions. In April, strikes beyond 20 kilometers doubled compared with March and were 4 times higher than in February. Signum and other Ukrainian drone formations have increasingly focused on vehicles moving across this corridor. Their role is not to occupy the road or physically block every kilometer. Instead, they try to maintain enough surveillance and strike capacity to make movement uncertain. That distinction matters. Fire control does not mean territorial control. Russian trucks can still use the highway, and military traffic has not disappeared. The pressure comes from the possibility that a vehicle can be detected, tracked, and attacked while still far from the trenches. This creates a different kind of rear area, one where distance offers less protection than before. The operational effect becomes clearer when the corridor is viewed as a chain rather than a single road. Mariupol, Berdyansk, and Melitopol sit along the northern coast of the Sea of Azov, while Crimea forms the southern end of the wider network. Ukrainian medium-range drones are trying to place more of that chain inside a persistent threat zone. This does not require continuous coverage over the entire route. A drone unit can watch selected road sections, junctions, or approaches where traffic becomes easier to identify. Fixed-wing drones can remain airborne longer than short-range FPVs, allowing crews to search wider areas and wait for military vehicles to enter exposed sections. Convoy plays a different role. It is not simply another stop on the same coastal road. Inside Crimea, the city functions as an important distribution point, connected with routes coming from the north and with transport links leading deeper into the peninsula. That makes it part of the same logistics picture, even though its geographic role is different from Mariupol or Melitopol. The broader shift is therefore about reach. Ukraine is attempting to move pressure from the immediate front into areas that once supported the front from relative safety. The military value of that effort becomes much more significant when we examine what this corridor carries, where those supplies are sent, and how many Russian formations depend on the network. Russia's southern logistics network depends on a long overland corridor linking Rostov-on-Don with occupied southern Ukraine and Crimea. Ukraine's defense ministry describes the R-280 route as extending for more than 500 kilometers through occupied Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, including Mariupol, Berdyansk, and Melitopol. Its importance comes from scale and continuity. The road connects Russian territory with transport hubs positioned behind several sectors of the southern front. This gives Moscow a ground route supporting forces across a wide operational area. Supplies entering from the east do not need to move toward one destination. They can be redirected through different junctions as battlefield demand changes. Mariupol provides an eastern gateway. Berdyansk sits farther along the Azov coast, and Melitopol connects the coastal corridor with routes leading toward Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea. The route therefore functions less like a single highway and more like the backbone of a wider transport system. Its value lies in keeping distant sectors connected to the same flow of military resources. The cargo reflects the daily demands of modern warfare. Fuel is required for trucks, armored vehicles, engineering equipment, generators, and other systems. Artillery ammunition and rockets must be replenished continuously when firing rates rise. Spare parts, replacement vehicles, repair equipment, and personnel also have to move toward units closer to combat. These categories create different transport pressures. Fuel requires tankers and storage points. Heavy ammunition needs trucks able to carry large loads safely. Engineering units depend on specialized machines that civilian cars or light vehicles cannot replace. Reinforcements must arrive together with the equipment and supplies needed to keep them operational. That makes delivery speed as important as total volume. A shipment that reaches its destination may still lose military value if it arrives after an offensive window has closed, or after a unit has reduced its activity. Southern logistics therefore depend on steady movement, not occasional large deliveries. Mariupol, Berdyansk, and Melitopol give the corridor another advantage by allowing supplies to be sorted and redirected before reaching individual formations. Instead of sending every shipment directly from Russia to one front sector, Moscow can move resources into intermediate hubs and then distribute them as requirements change. This supports lateral logistics across the occupied south. Material can move toward Donetsk when fighting intensifies there, toward Zaporizhia when Russian forces need additional ammunition or equipment, or farther south toward Kherson and Crimea. Such flexibility matters because battlefield demand rarely remains equal across every sector. This flexibility allows commanders to respond faster when battlefield priorities shift. The network also reduces the distance between major supply points and frontline formations. A truck beginning its journey in Russia need not remain in the same movement until final delivery. Cargo can be transferred, stored, reorganized, and dispatched again from hubs closer to its destination. For Russian commanders, this creates options. Resources can be shifted between sectors without rebuilding a separate supply chain each time priorities change. R-280 is only one part of Russia's southern supply architecture. Railways, ports, roads through occupied territory, and the Kerch Bridge provide additional connections between Russia, Crimea, and formations farther north. Together, these routes create redundancy, which is essential in wartime logistics. Redundancy means that pressure on one route does not automatically stop the entire system. Cargo can be delayed, redirected, transferred to rail, or moved through another road network when possible. This is why the strategic value of the corridor cannot be measured by traffic on one highway alone. The same structure also creates interdependence. When one connection loses capacity, more traffic must be absorbed by the remaining roads, rail lines, ports, or crossings. Those routes then carry a larger share of the logistical burden. Russia's southern network therefore gains strength from several overlapping options, but those options are not unlimited. Understanding that wider system before examining why Ukraine is expanding its target set beyond vehicles traveling on the road itself. Ukraine is expanding pressure on Russian logistics by targeting not only vehicles in motion, but also facilities that keep those vehicles supplied. Ukrainian drones have struck military trucks, fuel tankers, armored vehicles, and engineering equipment. These mobile targets matter because they carry supplies toward Russian units. But destroying a truck is only one part of the problem. A vehicle can be replaced, its cargo can be moved to another platform, and traffic can continue if the network behind it remains intact. The deeper objective is to attack the system that allows those vehicles to keep returning to the road with new cargo and functioning equipment. That shifts the campaign from isolated vehicle losses toward a broader effort against the infrastructure that supports movement itself and complicates daily military transport planning. For that reason, the campaign reaches beyond the road. Logistics yards, parking areas, temporary storage sites, fuel dumps, and staging points give Russian forces places to gather cargo before moving it closer to the front. They also organize convoys, transfer loads, and hold supplies. When such sites come under repeated attack, the problem is not limited to what is destroyed in the first explosion. Fuel and ammunition may have to be separated, vehicles may need new assembly areas, and personnel may have to operate from smaller locations with fewer support facilities. Concentrated logistics are efficient because one site can serve many vehicles at once. Once that concentration becomes dangerous, the same work has to be divided among more places, increasing complexity across the network without requiring every warehouse or vehicle park to be destroyed. Repair infrastructure forms another critical layer. Trucks, armored vehicles, and engineering machines operating over long distances require constant maintenance. Workshops, recovery points, spare parts, stores, and maintenance crews allow damaged equipment to return to service instead of remaining idle. Pressure on these facilities can therefore create effects that continue after the initial strike. A truck with damaged suspension or an armored vehicle requiring engine work may return quickly with nearby repair capacity. If that capacity is unavailable, the vehicle must wait or be moved elsewhere before it can rejoin operations. The same logic applies to bridges, road junctions, and railway nodes. These locations concentrate movement because several routes often depend on the same crossing or connection. A strike at one choke point can interrupt traffic beyond the immediate area. Rail facilities are especially important because trains can move heavy cargo in volumes that road transport cannot easily replace. Mariupol shows how these layers can overlap inside one logistics complex. The city connects roads, rail lines, port facilities, fuel storage, repair infrastructure, and distribution areas. Ukrainian strikes in June damaged facilities at the port, including power infrastructure, radar equipment, control facilities, and fuel storage, according to Ukrainian officials. Reuters reported that the attacks significantly limited the port's use, although the full scale of disruption could not be independently confirmed. A logistics hub gains value because several transport functions meet in one place. Cargo can arrive by road or rail, enter storage, move through port facilities, and continue toward another destination. When several parts of that system are hit, the effect becomes broader than the loss of one truck, warehouse, or storage tank. Ukraine is therefore attacking the connections that allow Russian logistics to function as a network. The next question is geographic. This pressure is no longer confined to Melitopol or the northern approaches to Crimea. It is spreading across more of the Sea of Azov coast. Ukraine is widening the danger zone along the northern coast of the Sea of Azov, and the pattern is no longer limited to one highway segment or one logistics hub. Strikes have been reported on routes linking Mariupol with Taganrog, Volnovakha, and Melitopol, creating pressure across several directions at the same time. The Mariupol to Taganrog route is especially important because it connects occupied southern Ukraine directly with the Rostov region. Supplies entering from Russia can use this eastern gateway before moving west along the coastal corridor. Ukrainian drone activity around Mariupol therefore threatens traffic before it reaches deeper distribution points. Reuters reported in June that Ukrainian units were striking transport arteries around Mariupol as part of a broader effort to disrupt Russian logistics. The Mariupol to Volnovakha direction matters for a different reason. It links the Azov coast with the Donetsk area, allowing military resources to move between the southern corridor and one of the most active sectors of the war. That means pressure around Mariupol can affect more than routes leading toward Crimea. It can also complicate transfers toward forces operating farther north. A road network gives commanders choices when one front needs vehicles, ammunition, or personnel. Berdyansk and Melitopol sit farther west and serve as intermediate points between the eastern entry routes and the approaches to Crimea. Their value comes from location. Supplies moving along the coast can be gathered, divided, and redirected from these areas toward different sectors depending on operational demand. This creates a chain in which each city supports the next stage of movement. Mariupol connects traffic from the east. Berdyansk sits along the central coastal route. Melitopol links the Azov corridor with roads leading toward Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea. Pressure at several points makes the system harder to protect as one continuous route. The farther military traffic moves along this chain, the more times it passes through exposed junctions, open road sections, and areas where surveillance can be concentrated. The geographic problem is simple. A fixed military site can be defended with concentrated systems. A highway stretching across hundreds of kilometers cannot. Russia can place Tor or Pantsir systems near major facilities, crossings, or command areas. Electronic warfare units can protect selected sectors, while mobile firing groups can patrol roads and respond to drone sightings. But none of these measures can create continuous protection over every junction, field, roadside approach, and open section of highway. That leaves gaps. Drone crews can search for areas where radar coverage is weaker, where terrain limits observation, or where traffic is forced through predictable routes. Long distances also create timing problems because air defense teams must decide which locations deserve the strongest protection and when. The result is not a solid wall of Ukrainian control, but a wider belt of uncertainty running along the Azov coast. Russian traffic may move safely through one section and face a higher risk farther west or north. That uneven pressure is difficult to solve with static defenses alone. As the threatened area expands, Moscow faces a choice. It can spread more air defense and electronic warfare assets across the corridor, or it can change how military traffic moves through it. The next stage of the contest is therefore shifting from protection of the road to adaptation of the transport system itself. Russia is changing how military traffic moves through the southern corridor because large, predictable convoys are easier to detect and track. Instead of sending many vehicles together, logistics units increasingly rely on smaller groups, wider spacing, and less regular departure times across increasingly complex and changing threat conditions. This reduces the chance that one drone team can identify and follow an entire column at once. It also makes secondary explosions less likely when fuel or ammunition vehicles are separated from other trucks. In some areas, military traffic has shifted toward night movement, poor weather, fog, and periods of lower visibility. These conditions can reduce the effectiveness of optical observation, but they no longer provide the same protection they once did. Thermal cameras allow drones to detect warm engines, exhaust systems, and moving vehicles after dark. Night movement therefore offers concealment, not immunity. Russian crews still have to manage speed, spacing, and route discipline while operating under the possibility of detection. Russia also uses secondary roads, forest tracks, and longer detours to avoid sections that are repeatedly observed or attacked. These routes can lower the chance of entering a known drone patrol area, but they create new problems. Secondary roads are often narrower, slower, and less suitable for heavy trucks. Forest tracks can restrict movement after rain or during poor ground conditions. Detours also increase travel distance and place greater demands on drivers, engines, tires, and fuel supplies. Ukraine has added another complication by using drones to drop mines or explosive devices onto selected roads. The purpose is not always to destroy a vehicle immediately. A suspected mine can stop traffic, force engineering teams to inspect the route, or push a convoy onto another road. This gives Ukraine another way to influence movement without maintaining a drone over the same location for hours. Even a short interruption can change the timing of a larger transport schedule and create uncertainty for units waiting farther along the route. Russia is also assigning more protection to logistics missions. Electronic warfare systems can interfere with drone control links or navigation. Mobile air defense teams and gun crews can watch for incoming UAVs, while escort vehicles provide security for high-value cargo. These measures improve survival, but they require equipment and personnel that must travel with the logistics system. A fuel convoy protected by jammers and mobile firing groups becomes more difficult to attack, yet it also becomes a larger military package that must be planned, coordinated, and supplied. Protection is also uneven. Russia cannot place the same level of air defense and electronic warfare coverage on every secondary road, junction, and temporary stop. Commanders must decide which routes and cargoes deserve the strongest protection at any given time. The result is a transport system that remains active but increasingly depends on careful timing, dispersion, route changes, engineering support, and defensive cover. These adaptations help Russia keep supplies moving through the corridor. The next issue is the cumulative price of doing so across hundreds of kilometers. Russia's overland corridor to Crimea has not been cut. Road traffic still moves, rail connections remain available, ports continue to support transport, and the Kerch Bridge gives Moscow another major link between Russia and the peninsula. The system still has alternatives, but those alternatives do not remove the pressure created along the R-280 corridor. The Guardian described part of this route as a highway of death because Russian logistics vehicles have faced repeated drone attacks along sections of the road. The phrase is dramatic, but the military effect is more important than the label itself. A supply route does not need to be completely closed to lose efficiency. A burning fuel tanker can block a lane and force following vehicles to stop or turn back. A strike on the lead vehicle of a convoy can trap the rest of the column behind it. A newly reported mine can close a road until engineers inspect the area. None of these events has to last for days to create disruption. Even a short delay can spread through a transport schedule built around fuel deliveries, ammunition movements, repair cycles, and troop rotations. The cumulative burden becomes the central problem. Longer routes consume more fuel. More driving creates additional wear on engines, tires, and suspension systems. Smaller convoys require more individual movements. Protective escorts increase the number of vehicles involved in each mission. Electronic warfare systems and mobile air defense teams add another layer of equipment and personnel that must be coordinated. Each measure can help keep traffic moving, but together they create operational friction across the network. That friction matters because military logistics depends on timing. Fuel arriving several hours late can delay armored movement. Ammunition arriving after a planned firing period can reduce artillery activity. Reinforcements reaching a sector later than expected can limit a commander's ability to react quickly to changes on the battlefield. This becomes especially important across the southern theater, where Russia may need to shift resources between Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea. A logistics system under persistent pressure can still function, but it may respond more slowly when demand suddenly rises in one area. The true effect of the campaign is therefore not measured only by destroyed trucks or damaged roads. It is measured by how much additional time, protection, fuel, maintenance, and coordination Russia must spend to move the same military resources. And that cost eventually reaches the units waiting at the front. Ukraine's medium-range drone campaign is changing the meaning of distance across the southern battlefield. Roads, rail links, bridges, depots, repair sites, and logistics hubs that once supported Russian forces from relative safety are becoming part of a wider pressure zone. Russia still controls the overland corridor, but maintaining that access now requires more dispersion, more protection, and more planning across hundreds of kilometers. The strategic test is whether Ukraine can sustain that pressure long enough to affect the pace of Russian operations, not simply destroy individual vehicles. Moscow can replace trucks. It can reroute convoys. It can move air defense and electronic warfare systems closer to key roads. but every adjustment consumes time and resources. The decisive question is no longer whether a Russian vehicle can travel from Rostov to Crimea. It is whether enough fuel, ammunition, equipment, and reinforcements can arrive fast enough to sustain combat power when and where it is needed. Understanding how logistics, drones, and military strategy shape a war helps us see not only how battles are fought, but also how costly modern conflict can become for entire societies. The more clearly we understand these systems, the better we can understand the value of preventing escalation and protecting peace. Subscribe to Military Force for more clear analysis of weapons, warfare, and global security.